Hello and welcome again to our reading of the Acts of the Apostles, and we're up to chapter 2, which is the coming of the Holy Spirit. Now we begin with an articular infinitive here after n, which is very common in biblical Greek. It happens in classical Greek as well, but this sort of construction is very common. And when you see this n plus a dative and infinitive, it generally means when. And now the verb is sum pleroo, and here it's in the passive. So it's a present, it's esthai, and it's been contracted, so it's a present infinitive. The word itself is not found in classical Greek. Pleroo is, of course, and it's not in the Septuagint either. It means to be fulfilled, and the idea of an Old Testament idea of time being fulfilled. We're probably best just to translate it, just came around. So when the day of Pentecost literally was fulfilled, or perhaps just translate came around. Now Pentecost, of course, is 7 weeks after the Passover. All were homu, adverb, together, epi top auto. Now we've seen that phrase before, and we'll see it again. It's one of Luke's favourite little phrases. It simply means together. So all were together, well, in the same place, you might translate it as. It's slightly redundant having homu and then epi to auto, but just to emphasise that they were all together in one place. And egeneto, it came to pass, or it happened, that now aphno is an adverb, meaning quickly, or perhaps suddenly. So here, so suddenly, an ekos, we get our word echo from that, so there was a sound from heaven, hosper, as, and then we get a genitive here, as of a mighty strong, from bios, a mighty breeze, pheromenos, being carried, so borne along, a mighty breeze borne along, and it filled, from pleroo, again, this is the aorist from pleroo, it filled the whole house, who, there's that where again, we've seen, so where they were sitting. So we get a periphrastic used here with the for the verb to be plus a participle, which is generally not classical, but is common enough in the New Testament. And glossai, tongues, hos a. You could have just had hos, but Luke likes this form hos a. It's hos plus a, as if. Puros, genitive, from pur, of fire. Ophtheosan is the aorist passive from horao. So there's horao, opsomai, adon, and then the passive, aorist passive form is ophthe, or ophthain in the first person. So ophtheosan was seen. So tongues as of fire was seen autois by them, tongues which were diamerizomenoi, these were it's feminine agreeing participle agreeing with the glossai, distributed. It's got that meros part and that distributed dia, so distributed, and it sat, so this is the fire again, and it sat, or the F henna hekaston auton, upon each one of them. So tongues as a fire, being distributed, was seen by them. It could also mean being distributed to them. You could take that as the object after this participle. It's more natural to take it with the verb, I think. So was seen by them, being distributed, and it rested on, it literally sat upon, so it rested on each one of them. Kai and all a place their son. This is the aorist from Pim Plamy is the verb here. So if you're looking this one up, this is Pim Plamy is the verb. And you can see again what's happening here. We're getting in the present, we're getting a that pi at the beginning is in fact a reduplication. Greek has a lot of these words. We have a reduplicated present. We get a nasal infix, and there's the stem hiding in here once you take off the ending. So there is the stem, Pimplamy. So the root of it is play, and here we're getting the aorist passive form, place their son. Greek has a lot of verbs like this, like mimnesko, same sort of construction. So it's Pimplamy is the verb you look up in the dictionary. It means to fill. So this is the aorist passive. So all of them were filled, and it's taking a partitive genitive with Holy Spirit. No articles here. It's we'll see Holy Spirit mentioned again, of course, in Acts as we move through, and it generally does have the article with each. I don't think we can make too heavy a weather of the fact the article's not here in this point. Sometimes when it's used in the genitive case, you don't get the articles, but you're not getting them here, but you do elsewhere. So all were filled with Holy Spirit, and they began to speak in other tongues, in other languages, as the Spirit edidu, this is the imperfect of didomi, was giving, so was allowing it for them, apophthengesti, to speak. This is from it's apophthengomai. Phthengos is an old word, poetic word for a voice. So as the Spirit gave them utterance, it's often translated as the Spirit gave them voice. And there were in Jerusalem Jews dwelling, men who were eulabes, this is a third declension adjective, so it's eulabes with an eta there, and this is just the nominative plural. It means pious or devout, from every nation of those under heaven, so from every nation under heaven. Genitive absolute, and when this voice occurred, perhaps when this sound occurred, the multitude came together, kai sun ekuthe. Now this is from the verb sung keo. If you're looking this up in the dictionary, you look it up under sung keo. The nasal nu becomes a guttural nasal before the chi. Some dictionaries also do record this as sun keo as well, and don't gutturalize the nasal, but that's the verb sun keo, and it means here to be. This is the aorist passive. Literally, they were poured out. So it's a word that comes to mean confounded or confused. So they were confused because they were hearing them speaking, each one in his own dialect. And verbs of hearing of people generally take a genitive, and so that's genitive after this verb of hearing. So they were hearing them speaking, each one in his own dialect. And they were amazed. This is from the standard word for amazed, literally to stand outside of yourself, so to be amazed. They were amazed, and they were, thaumasdo is also to amaze or to wonder at. So they were amazed and in wonderment, saying, participle here, uk idu, behold, question here expecting the answer yes, are not all these men speaking Galileans? And how, understand, is it that we, So how do we hear, each one in his own dialect, in his own language, in the language in which, now dialectos is a feminine noun, even though it ends in os. It's one of those second declension feminine nouns, and hence that's why we've got feminine forms here, and why the relative pronoun is feminine. One often, this sort of Greek is often called Koine Greek, and it's feminine because of this. It is in fact Koine dialectos. So Koine dialectos is the common dialect, and generally this doesn't get mentioned here, and you just call it Koine Greek. But that's why it's feminine, because it's agreeing back with this, probably with this word dialectos. Anyway, so in our dialect in which we have been born, this is from genao, to beget, and this is the aorist passive, in which we were born. Parthians and Medes and Elamites, those dwelling in Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya which are at Cyrene, and those who were epidaemuntes. Epidemio is to make a visit. So those who were visiting, those Romans who were visiting. It's often the word almost means on holiday, they were travelling. Jews and proselytes, these are converts to Jews, Cretans and Arabians. We hear, and again taking a genitive, we hear them speaking in their own tongues the great things of God. And all were amazed and perplexed. This is diaporio. The imperfect, they were perplexed, each one saying to the other, tithele tutoenai. This is an idiom, literally, what does this thing wish to be? So it's idiomatic for what does this mean? But others, dia kluasdontes, this is a fairly old word, I think it means mocking or sneering. Elegon, imperfect, began to say that they are mestomenoi. This is from mestoo is the verb. It's a contracted omicron verb. This is the perfect passive participle. It's being used periphrastically here. So they have been filled. Glucus, this is genitive here. It's top glucos is the word. It's a third declension neuter, and it's being filled with sweet wine. This is a late word, and it's only here in the New Testament.